My name is Casey Coker, and I am a filmmaker.
What happened to the doctor?
I killed him!
I've been doing this since I was 12 years old. I'm 35 years old at this point, so shit, I'm not gonna do the math, you can do it. I was in 7th grade in English class with a woman named Miss McDonald. And I remember I was just zoning out and not really paying attention to what she had to say. And then I had this mental image just for a split second of a morbidly obese man rolling down the world's longest staircase, and it was violent and horrible and the most hilarious thing in the world because the whole time he was rolling down, crashing through banister rails and stuff, and I thought it was the fucking funniest thing that I'd ever heard in my life, or seen in my life, and it was all in my head. And how do I explain this to somebody like, this is incredibly funny, this is the funniest thing ever? And I remember I busted out laughing in the middle of the class, and she drugged me out of the class and started screaming at me, and like, she just thought that I was just laughing at her. And I didn't know how to tell her, like, no, I wasn't laughing at you, I was just laughing. And so I remember I went home that night, and my dad had this RCA VCR like camcorder. And so I found that I had a stop motion function, and I had to show people what was going on, so I made these little characters out of clay and tried to reenact the thing just frame by frame, and it was the most rudimentary, horrible stop motion ever, but that was it for me. I realized that I could show people what was in my head instead of just talk to them about it, and to show people that your own perspective on life can be hilarious. I started taking television production classes in Del Mar, the local community college in Corpus Christi, and took every class that they had to offer. And from there, I was out of classes to take. They didn't have any kind of degree that was set for television production. They didn't have any kind of RTF majors or anything. And so I thought about it. I'd already spent 3 years in community college for it. What was I gonna do next? And I thought that the best idea for me was to do it for real. Move to California, work on film cameras, be on real sets, do it real, like do it right. And so I bit the bullet. I went to San Francisco, and I left my entire life behind. I left my fiance at the time, my car, like I basically had a backpack, and I just moved to San Francisco, and I just walked everywhere for 4 years. I was living in squalor because the city is way too expensive, and I was making films with real filmmakers. Our instructors were flown in every week for the days that they would teach. And I got to do some really cool things, like I worked on several movie sets. I think the highlight was probably Pirates of the Caribbean 3, and Phil Bowen was the film loader for that film. And so he actually just took the class on a field trip. And there was some really cool stuff like that happened, but when I look back on it, what did I learn? Like, sure, I got to play with film cameras, I got to learn all the lingo, but is $160,000 education worth lingo? I mean, I can have a conversation at parties, but it didn't make me a better filmmaker. So it was kind of a problem when I realized that I had spent all of my life savings, and I was stuck in San Francisco, and I didn't get the education that I wanted. And I just started kind of thinking, why did I even move? I would come back for summers and I would work on different films and stuff. Like the summer of 2005, I was able to work on a music video for one of my favorite bands, Riverboat Gamblers, and I worked on a campaign for Freebirds. And so I would be able to come back to Texas, in my hometown where I already sprung my roots, and I would be working and in the field. And then I would go back to San Francisco and I was nobody again. And no matter what I told anybody, everybody would just like, oh yeah, we don't trust filmmakers unless they have a degree. And it was the strangest thing coming back to Corpus Christi and finding out that my degree should have come in 2-ply, because that's the best thing I could do is wipe my ass with. When my mom was hit by the 18-wheeler, I remember I spent 3 months in Orange, California, and while we were in the hospital, they said that she was not going to live. They had her intestines only being covered by a bowl that they put over her stomach, because she got hit so hard that it just crushed her, ripped her apart, ripped her diaphragm off of her rib cage. It splayed her open, broke both of her legs. She had her jaw offset, and they had to wire everything back together. She was going to die, and it was really hard news. It's really hard when somebody says, you need to go say goodbye to your mother. And you know, sometimes you just have to stop everything and do what you have to do. And that was one of those times. And you know, it's hard to just take everything that you've worked so hard for and just kind of stick it in a jar and throw it in the freezer for a little bit so that you can tie up all your loose ends. And I had to do that. And so after 3 years of taking my mom to rehab and working with her, we had to take a train back from Orange, California, because if she went into an airplane, her diaphragm would rip back off of her ribcage just from the altitude. And it was just this crazy, crazy time in my life where it was just, everything was touch and go. And she, after 12 life-threatening, intense surgeries, and it's been 10 years now, actually, almost to the day. Almost to the day, it's been a decade. And she's back teaching dance, and she's back literally on her feet, and she's happy, and she's never once complained about anything. And I have to say, God damn it, that's the most inspirational shit I've ever seen in my life. I mean, her story is that she grew up as a dance teacher, and she was horribly crippled, and she kept doing it no matter what. And honestly, if you have passion for something, that's where it has to be. You're not gonna make it unless you just keep going no matter what. And the entire world is gonna kick you down the entire time. They're gonna slander you, they're gonna tell you that you're not shit, they're gonna tell you everything that is going to make you fail because you're a threat to them. And there's a handful of good people in the world that aren't threats, that understand that it takes a village to tell a story, it takes a village to make a movie. And you can't do anything by yourself, you have to work with teams. And as long as you can keep your head up and keep pushing and keep going and just give it all you've got, you're gonna get where you need to go. You can't give up.